Hey. Welcome to my first video, my first recording. Welcome to my channel. Welcome. My name is Benedicta, Dr. Benedicta. And I'm so excited to share that today is my 1 year anniversary. Like, I made it a whole year. That's so crazy. And I'm still single, so not that anniversary, but it has been 1 year since I surrendered my life to Christ. 1 year since I gave up my will for His will, and baby, the things that God has done in my year in the past, the things that God has done in my life in the past year have just been like, how and who am I? But I'm just gonna go through month by month, give a good recap, a quick little reflection, and then I'll end out with about 3 of my top learnings or takeaways. Pray that this video blesses you. Make sure you watch to the end. Go ahead and just like the video now. You can, do all those other things. Comment, you got questions, you relate to something. Let me know if what I'm saying is helping you in any way. And subscribe, of course, right? Because why not? You won't regret it. I'm sure you won't. But yeah, I'm going to start with a little background and kind of like where I came from. So, born and raised in the church, my mom was a pastor, went to church almost every Sunday because it wasn't even optional in our house, right? And even when I got older and was still on my own, went to college, went to boarding school for high school, still was going to church, still labeling myself as a Christian, right? And had no idea who God really was. Like, I went to church, I heard about Him, but for myself, for my personal, he was not my personal person at all. He was just someone, external to the world that I lived in. Sometimes I chose to involve him in my world, most times I didn't, but I labeled myself as a Christian and did the 2x4, 1x2. I prayed to him sometimes. I sang worship songs on Sunday. I did the basic checklist of what most Christians label their Christianity to be, right? Um, and did that pretty much all throughout my life, all through the over 20 years of my life. So then we have May. May of 2021, I graduated from pharmacy school. So I'm a pharmacist by trade. And it was almost like everything in my life was kind of reaching this solid, firm place, this precipice. All the accomplishments were starting to kind of reach this point where everything was starting to align, everything was starting to agree. I felt like I had vision and clarity on how to hit the ground running in this next chapter of my life, post graduating and spending almost all my life in school, right? But shortly after came June, and it was almost just like there was a rug that was just snatched from underneath my feet, like, and left me on my face. I spent most of my days sleeping. I was probably the most depressed, and I was clinically diagnosed with depression in college, actually. And that's going to be a story for another day. But was clinically depressed or clinically diagnosed with depression while I was in school. But when I got to June, this depression was different. Like, I spent most of my days like actually sleeping, was not eating, had board exams to be studying for, couldn't even study, couldn't bring myself to do anything. I would try to go out and do things and almost was like putting on this mask and facade, like I was happy and everything was okay, life was going great, but deep inside I knew that it wasn't. I was so empty. I literally felt so broken. I kind of felt like shattered, and I was like almost like holding myself together with glue. Didn't know where it came from, why it came, whatever it may be, but it was just like everything that I had accomplished meant nothing to me. Even the fact that I just graduated a month ago, one of the biggest accomplishments in my life, in June, by the time June of 2021 came, it literally meant nothing to me. None of it meant anything. And so I'm navigating June, feeling so empty, feeling so broken. Didn't really know like where to turn. I started journaling actually in June, writing up my thoughts and feelings every now and then, and that's how I'm even able to look back and see, where I was truly in that time. But it wasn't really giving what it was needing to give. It wasn't giving new graduate. It wasn't giving new doctor. It wasn't giving new level, next level. It wasn't giving none of that. It was giving, how did I get here? So then, boom, we have July. And July is what I would call the turning point. Everything just went in literally what seemed like 24 hours, okay? It's like overnight. July 3rd, 2021, at my best friend's birthday party. Shout out to Wanga. Happy birthday. Love you so much. But that night at her birthday party, received a word from God through someone else. And she basically came up to me and was like, be like almost frustrated. Like, and I'm like, I'm just here to celebrate my friend. But anywho, just joking. But she came up to me and she's like, B, God wants to use you. God really wants to use you, like use you mightily. And this wasn't the first time that I've heard this, and that wasn't the last time that I've heard it since then. But God wants to use you mightily. And almost like this, God is frustrated with you. Like, God is like, why do you keep trying to outrun me? She literally said, she was like, you've been trying to live your life running on a treadmill, meaning you're literally running like this, like a hamster on a treadmill, literally running in circles, like running in the same place, exhausting yourself. Meanwhile, I can take you to the same places, if not further, walking. Like I can literally carry you there if you would just surrender to me. I could carry you to the same places and beyond if you would just surrender to me. And that thing just really just, mind you, I just said June was just like, how did I even get here? So that thing was just really cutting. It was really cutting deep. I said, so I went home pondering that night, like, you can take me to the same places walking that I've been taking myself running in circles, not making no real progress, it seems like. Okay. So that very night, I said, okay. I decided to take a bet on God and never looked back since. So let me get to August. August was a chill month, little buffer month. I just, got out of this place of I'm gonna rely on myself and start moving into what it looked like to surrender. Remember, I just took this bet on God, so I'm like, okay, bet what's it supposed to look like? It was new, it was different. Um, but in August, my desires already started shifting. I already started talking different. I already started viewing myself differently. The way I thought about the things that I was doing, the things that I would say, the places that I would go. My mindset already started to shift around these things, right? September came along, and it was almost just like I was starting to really die to myself, die to the desires of my flesh, die to the things that were holding me in bondage to the world, and really developing this like yearning to actually know God for myself. Like, what does His Word actually say? What does an actual conversation with God actually feel like? Who actually is God, right? Just all the questions and things that you kind of hear about growing up in church, but that you don't really honestly know in your heart for yourself until you discover them for yourself. And so that's really what like August and September were for me. So then we get to October. By the time I got to October, it's so crazy how fast God moves. Like, and how fast my process I feel like was from July to October is only about 3 months or is 3 months. By the time I got to October, you couldn't find me in a club. You couldn't find me going to places that I know I had no business going as a believer, had no business going. You couldn't find me entertaining certain conversations or even entertaining certain people. My desires had completely shifted. My heart had completely shifted. My mindset had completely shifted. The things that I was saying, like, everybody knew that I was talking to at that time knew I was like obsessed with Jesus. I was calling Jesus my boyfriend. He still is at this point. But I was calling my Jesus my boyfriend. Like everybody just knew that like something different was going on, right? Um, October I would also label as a month of my deliverance. There is a fast that this ministry in Connecticut, Kingdom Flow Tabernacle, does every year in October. It's called a Marriage/Destiny Fast. And I would say October was a month of my deliverance. So all the toxicities, LOL, is that toxicities, covenants, lack of revelation and knowledge that I was missing, I was really restored of such, and everything that was in me that needed to go broke off of me in October. You couldn't find me, you just, not anymore, not after October, right? Get to November, I literally emptied out my entire wardrobe. Like my mindset was so renewed down to the innermostest of me to the externalmostest of me that like everything in my wardrobe that did not align with who I was now versus who I used to be had to go. I think I had like 2 baskets worth of clothes that I was just ready to throw away in the trash. Like didn't suit me anymore. Didn't suit the new person that I was not reflective of the work that God had already done in my heart, right? So October was like the physical makeover. Excuse me, November was like the physical makeover. So then we get to December. December was a very interesting month, and I think December really set the tone for how 2022 was going to go. Early December, the Lord instructed me to denounce. I was in a sorority. That'll be a whole other separate video in itself because we'll be here all day talking about that. But the Lord told me to denounce. I denounced in December. Shortly after denouncing, the Lord told me to move out. So at that time, I was living with my mom, and really comfortable because Who? Why am I paying rent if I don't have to? Um, but yeah, it's like that month of like getting rid of the last of everything, like everything that was still in his way, getting rid of it completely. So December, I felt, even though I felt like I had nothing and I had nobody and all the things that I held on to before up until that point, I had no more. I still have this peace and completeness and wholeness to me that was just so unexplainable. So then we get to January. January 1st, like there was no sin in my life that I had not confessed. People were getting voice notes, people were getting phone calls, people were getting text messages. There was nothing that the enemy could still hold over me. I didn't care what it was, how bad it was. I, I felt so, I don't even want to say naked because I had so much peace and I wasn't really ashamed at that point anymore. But it was just like I knew that I had to let it go and I knew the sins had to be confessed. I knew they had to be crucified. Like, and let the kingdom of darkness know that there's literally no more power that you can hold over me. Not anymore. Not in this 2022. Not for me. So we get to the end of January. I move out. I said, God, I obey. You sent Abraham out. Abraham ain't had no instructions. He didn't even know where he was going. You said to the place that you will show him. I said, if he could do it, I'm gonna figure out how to do it. So I moved out. Everybody thought that I was crazy. Everybody thought that I was crazy. Literally everybody. Like, don't even know how else to say that. Everybody thought that I was crazy. Yeah. But moved out, and all of a sudden there was something that happened spiritually, and it was like dream proliferation. Like the revelation that God just began to drop in my lap became so heavy and even sometimes overwhelming. I started to see things that I would never imagine that I would see. I started to know things that I would have imagined that I would never know, right? And I started dreaming really in August-ish, and I've dreamt before in like my worldly life, like knew I was getting into pharmacy school before I was getting into pharmacy school, right? But like the way everything kind of shifted in January was so crazy to me. And so I started writing everything down, but that's set a whole nother tone and course for my life that we'll just get into in another video because again we'll be here all day. February comes, I get baptized. I was so excited. It was so impromptu. The church had like rules and regulations on how you get baptized, and I just prayed and I said, God, if you want me to get baptized, I'm getting baptized. And lo and behold, I got baptized. And I think so many people were against, I'm sorry if I'm talking too fast, so many people were against me getting baptized. You know, you already got baptized. But if nothing in my life changed the first time I got baptized, and I got baptized as a child, I gave my life to Christ as a child, but nothing in my life changed. There was no fruit of being a child of God in my life before or after getting baptized. I thought it was more than appropriate for me to get baptized again. And so that's what I did. Um, and that was really just like my time to come out and proclaim to the world, like, there is a new thing going on. Behold, behold, there's a new thing going on. God is doing some good things. But I think at that time is when I really started to get marked by a lot of people as like delusional. Um, Family members like, this is too much, like we believe in God too, like why is your own different, why do you think that believing in God takes all of this, do you actually hear from God, like questioning and trying to make me doubt this new relationship that I have built with God. It was kind of disheartening, like even down to like family members trying to check me into a mental asylum, all sorts of craziness. Like, I think at this point I might have so many other videos I need to do because I can't talk about it all in this one video. But crazy, 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 crazy. March, moved into my new apartment that I still live in now. um but March is when I really started speaking out more, like sharing my concerns, sharing my opinions, sharing my voice, sharing my biblically sound opinions, my biblically sound opinions, and being bold or bolder in who God has called me to be and the identity and this new identity that I carry in Christ. And so, yeah, March was really about me kind of like grabbing that microphone and taking hold of such. So April comes, and I feel like on this journey, I've done a lot of like surrendering already, giving up. April, by the time I get to April, it's like this wilderness season that I kind of entered into, December, January, and really feeling like God bringing me to a place of like true nothingness, like true. assurance and comprehension that like I am nothing without him, right? He did that pretty much through like January through March, but April came and I thought that I was leaving or exiting my wilderness season into my promised land, only for God to be like, yeah, I need you to leave your job, that corporate America job that you think that you're, going to continue on in. I need you to let that go. And I almost kind of like doubted that that was really what he would want or really would tell me to do. And testimony loading on that. We're going to talk about that another day because we'll be here forever. Again, trying to talk about all these things. But long story short, left the job. Even told when I was telling my boss, like he was literally asking me, like, okay, so what company are you going to? How much are they paying you? Trying to draft up some type of competing offer because he thought that I was doing well. I think a lot of people have this misconception, even my family members thought that I got fired. Like have this misconception that like it wasn't going well. And I quit because I didn't like it. I loved it actually. I was working in the commercial side of the business, pharmaceutical company in the East Coast, but loved it. Loved every single bit of it, and was doing really, really well to the point where I knew I was getting hired a year early in my training program. My boss was ready to give me the offer as soon as I told him I was leaving, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to another company. I'm just taking a step away. It's time for me to like let this thing go. I think people even thought something happened to me or something was wrong. I don't know. But yeah, it was hard. It was probably the biggest sacrifice that I've made, just almost like giving up my career in a sense, like giving up what I thought my career was going to be, giving up what I wanted my desires to be. And I knew that there were things that he was calling me to work on and things that he wanted me to develop and take more seriously and invest more time in that I really couldn't do in the job that I was in, working like the hours and the commitment of my time that I was working with at that time, but gave it up. I said, okay, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why. Questioned him, of course, but still did it. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, yeah, there are going to be times where God is going to give you instructions that feel like God wouldn't tell me to do that. But I think one thing is like obedience is better than sacrifice. So yeah, while I was counting the sacrifice that I was giving up, the most important thing was my obedience to God in that moment, and assuring that my will was submitting to his will, not aligning, because sometimes we think that our desires need to align with what God's desires are for us. Our job or our role really is to make sure that we are in submission to his will, because many times what he wants for us is not what we think we even need for ourselves. Um, so yeah, that was April. Then we get to May, and I call May the like identity month. May, all of a sudden, it was just like everything became about my identity. So crazy. I received a phone call in May that also did another kind of shift in my mindset. But received a phone call in May from a girl that I went to school with, and she pretty much was telling me, had questions about my journey and things that I have been posting on social media since that time, but really asked me a lot of questions about, those things, but more importantly, told me in that phone call, she was like, I know that you weren't like my official mentor and we weren't like super, super, super close. We talked often, but you were my reference point. Like anytime I wanted to make a big decision about my life or wanted to decide how to do something or needed help with something, I always looked to you as a reference point. And the way that thing just shattered me, like as much as I think some people would listen to that as a compliment, it was almost just like disheartening to myself. Like I used how many years of my life as a reference point for so many people, leading them in the wrong direction. With where I knew that I was now and where I knew that I was going, it was so like, dang, like how many people have I led to hell? How many people have I led or championed or enabled in the kingdom of darkness? How many people have I enabled to think that they can live their lives lukewarm? How many people have I enabled to block? And the list goes on, right? But for someone to call me their reference point and me to just really reflect on the life that I was living before, and the decisions that I made that enabled people to make similar decisions was really like heartbreaking. And I committed to myself that day that the same way that I led all these people, the same way that I led all these people in the wrong direction, I was never again going to let an opportunity go by where I don't use who I am now to lead somebody in the other direction. And May, again, just really reshaping my identity, becoming solid in who I am, and making sure that everything that I am doing and the impact that I'm leaving and the aspire to aspire and all these little cute things we say in this carnal world was going in the right direction, aiming and shooting back to the kingdom of God, aiming and shooting back to being a servant of Christ and being his messenger, being his disciple, right? Okay. So let me get to June. June was a month of wrestling. Lord literally told me in June we was gonna wrestle. You like to make it out of this month. You're gonna have to wrestle for some things. You're gonna have to wrestle your way out of things. It's not gonna be an easy month, but you will persevere. And I did just that, baby. Okay. Made my way out. Did what I had to do, and we have made it full circle. July 3rd, 2022. July 3rd, 2022. And so I say all that to say that like this year has had ups and it has had downs. Um, I named, I feel like probably even more bad than good, but in all, I thank God. I really just do thank God. So, three things that I have learned in this past year. Number one, there is no such thing as trusting God too much. No such thing. No such thing. There is no such thing as trusting God too much. And God will never disappoint. God will never forsake you. God will never leave you. If God is for you, it doesn't matter who is against you. Like, there is no such thing as trusting God too much. There's no battle that He will not help you overcome. There is no circumstance. There is no sacrifice too big. There is nothing that you could do. There is nothing that you can do. When you are aligned with God and you're doing what He told you to do, there's no such thing as trusting him too much. It doesn't matter what anyone says. Our flesh is so weak that we underestimate how powerful God is. Let me say that again. Our flesh is so weak that we underestimate how powerful God is, but there is no such thing as trusting him too much. And I'm going to just leave that there. Number two, grace. Everyone's grace does not operate the same, like at all. And I think it's so important to realize who you are. Like, this is why it's so crucial to recognize who you are and what God has called you to do. Because who you are and what God has called you to do will determine and let you see and operate in the graces that He's giving you. But when your eyes are so fixated on what everybody else is doing and why you can't do, or why it's not easy for you or doesn't make sense for you to do what everybody else is doing, but while you're sitting here comparing yourselves to other people, God has given you certain graces that He has not given them. And He has given them obviously graces that He has not given you. But yeah, why it's important to just show up and operate in the grace that He's given you. Everyone's grace will not operate the same. Number three, and lastly, and I think most important thing that I've learned this past year, if you love God, you'll obey God. Full stop, period, the end. We can end it right here. But if you love God, you'll obey God. Like, this whole lukewarm thing, one foot in, one foot out. I don't know how else to say that one, but if you love God, you'll obey God. Regardless of what the world is saying, regardless of what society is doing, regardless of what your friends are doing, regardless of even what your church is doing and what your church members are doing. If you love God, you will obey God, not religion, not Christianity, not your pastor, not your, I mean, you should obey your parents and you should honor people in authority and blah, 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 blah. But if you love God, you'll obey God. The end. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Yeah. So if you made it to the end, God bless you, God bless you, God bless you. So happy to be able to share this day with you all. It's an honor, to be honest. Um, Again, like the video, comment if you have any questions or relate to something that I said. Of course, subscribe because why not? And yeah, until next time.